welcome to Elevating Products Through Third-Party Certification. I'm Scott Arnold, Senior Manager of Publications and Standards for Air Movement Control Association International. On behalf of our more than 400 members worldwide, I want to thank all of you for joining us. We realize there's a lot to see and do at the HR Expo. We respect and value your time and hope you find this educational session well worth your while. The information contained in the session is provided by AMCA as an educational service. In making this educational activity available, AMCA is not endorsing, sponsoring, or recommending a particular company, product, or application. This session is protected by U.S. and international copyright laws. Reproduction, distribution, display, and use of the material without written permission from AMCA International is prohibited. And with that out of the way, let's meet our presenter. Charlie Myers is Senior Manager of Certification Services for AMCA International. He has more than 10 years of experience managing and administering International Organization for Standardization and International Electrotechnical Commission product certification programs globally, with additional expertise in project management and quality control program development. Charlie?
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. Thank you. So my presentation style is I tend to, ask a lot of questions, get a better understanding of who you are, where you come from, and kind of tailor the conversation to how this best meets your needs. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is a brief overview of third-party certification, why these products, why this service is critical in today's marketplace. We need to make sure that what is available to the market is safe and the information that is out there is verified, and that any claims that are being made from you as either as a manufacturer or as a distributor who is selling products, or even as a retailer, products that you get, that those are what they say they are and no one will be hurt, or that your customers continue to go back to your store because they see that you sell quality products. And then we'll touch on the quick benefits as a consumer, as a manufacturer, as a retailer, and the overall environment, and making sure that these products continue to support the world in a way that actually provides some level of sustainability. Especially in the HVAC industry, sustainability has been a very, very hot topic. So we want to make sure that these products continue to make themselves, benefit the global. So with that, I'm going to ask a quick question. Who in the room operates as a manufacturer? Who operates as a distributor? Who operates as just as an engineer, as a specifier? All right, so somewhat mixed, so I'm going to touch on each three groups here. Did I leave anybody out? Oh, okay. We can touch on that. All right. So I'll start off just as for those that are not familiar with this. Out of the manufacturers and the distributors, who's familiar with the likes of the ULs, the Intertechs of the world? Is everybody overall familiar with the concept of third-party certification? Seeing nods, no one's shaking their head. So okay. So why does this exist? There are various reasons, examples of types of certification. The main one that everybody's used to is safety certification. On electrical products, you want to make sure that that product does not electrocute anybody, that it doesn't cause a fire, that there's no overload if there's any surge protection. If you're looking at, fire and life safety products, that they're able to withstand a fire for a certain amount of time. That way, emergency personnel can come and evacuate the building. There's various safety aspects that apply to anything out there. In addition to that, there's performance claims that need to be certified. The organization that I come from, AMCA International, our program is based on performance claims, where a fan manufacturer will provide a fan curve on how a fan is going to perform at a given speed. How does an engineer or a specifier know that that claim is correct, that it's been validated, that they're not just making up numbers? Certification program will validate that information in a test environment, make sure that those claims are correct, and then through ongoing validation, continue to validate those claims that are being made in product catalogs. Along those lines, There are claims verifications where a manufacturer of a product may make a claim that is not necessarily associated with a known test standard. But what happens along with those claims, they will help develop a test standard or a test protocol that will help to validate those claims. And that's familiar with like the UL Verified program. That's the purpose of that program, is that somebody can say, yes, this product met this claim under these certain conditions. Now, what types of products require third-party certification? Pretty much everything. Realistically, from the clothes you wear to the gas you put in your car to the electrical equipment that you use at home, everything seems to have little symbols on the back of it. When you plug it into the wall, the little box there, there's all sorts of symbols and numbers and letters on there. They all mean something. And those are meant to provide some quality to end users, retailers, specifiers, building officials, whoever the end user of that product. They're meant to look at that information and say, yes, this has been validated by a independent third-party certification body. Overall, from a third-party certification process, for those that may not be familiar with how this works, first thing that they go through is they go through a testing process. There is a known test standard that is developed by a standard development organization. That product is sent into a lab where it is subsequently tested and validated against those claims. Some test methods are simply just performance-based. There is no pass-fail criteria. Whatever the results are, the results are. Some have pass-fail criteria established within the test standard, and either you pass it or you don't based off the criteria of that. Once that test has either passed, or if it's a performance test where you have that data, you then apply for certification. And that certification application will go through various review process along with the information that is claiming certification. And I'll touch on it a little bit later on what that review process, because there's two parts of the review process. There's a technical aspect and then there's a certification aspect, just to make sure everything about this claim is being validated. Once that review has taken place, we move forward with the certifying of the product. You'll get your stamp, you'll look at the back of a product, it'll have various logos or seals on them that indicate that that product is certified. However, there needs to be a validation of that process, because all the certification body has done at that point in time is tested one or maybe multiple versions of a product. How are they going to know that ongoing production of that product is the same as what was done when that product was initially tested? So there is a verification of that, and there are various different ways of doing that verification. You may be familiar from a manufacturer perspective where somebody goes and visits your facility, or there's ongoing testing, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. So there are various different types of testing depending on the type of certification that you want. As mentioned, most people are familiar with the product safety and compliance standards. You want to make sure that the end user of this product is not going to be injured whenever they utilize the product. So we're dealing with, electrical equipment that they don't plug it into a wall or end up shocking themselves when they go and they use it. Fire, mechanical injury as well. As I stated, performance testing, you want to make sure that the information that you obtain or you provide to your customers, or the information that you're looking at as an end user, is correct and somebody's validated those claims. So there's performance testing to help establish those particular metrics that you could then put in your marketing collateral. Electrical testing, we want to make sure that voltage, current, insulation resistance, that those are correct for the market that you're looking to sell in. And then lastly, environmental testing. Conditions around the world vary from place to place. You want to make sure that your product will withstand whatever environment that is going to be in. Some products are intended to be used in extreme weather conditions. Ice hockey, you don't want to test your ice hockey equipment in a furnace. You want to test it in the cold and make sure that it withstands, ideal, normal operating temperatures. But you want to validate that performance under, use cases. As I mentioned, there's a third-party certification review that occurs. There's a technical review that typically happens. These are the engineers that you may be familiar with at a various certification body, where they will go and they will validate that testing was performed in accordance to the applicable standard it was tested to. Make sure testing was done correctly, make sure everything was done in a manner in which that the information that you're looking at is accurate and reputable and can be moved forward to take to a commercial market. Second review is the certification review. All certification bodies that are recognized utilize a standard that's ISO 17065. This is meant to operate an independent certification body that is free of commercial aspects and partiality that might be influenced by various relationships that you have, that you are a true independent third-party body. As an end user, you want to make sure that the certification body that you're working with is accredited to that particular standard. That way they are not operating in the best interest of their customers. They're operating in the best interest of the market as a whole. This certification review is to make sure that those requirements have been met, that we're following the scheme that has been established and has been accredited to ISO 17065, and that everything is done in accordance. That way we are truly operating as an impartial manner. As mentioned, the last part of this and the maintaining of your certification is done through what's known in the industry as follow-up services. A lot of you, maybe especially on the manufacturing side, are used to either quarterly, semi-annual, or annual inspections at your manufacturing facilities. Someone's just knocking on your door unexpectedly, just like, let me in, let me make sure that you're following your process. That is a way for third-party certification bodies to validate that if you're looking at, say, a fan, that you're using all the same components that were used when it was originally tested. They'll validate, they'll walk the floor, they'll make sure that you're doing your dielectric testing, everything that goes along with your safety certification. Other means of doing verification are done through testing. This is very common on the performance side of things, where if you're establishing metrics on a particular product, especially a fan, how are you going to know that that fan is going to perform on the same curve? You're not going to know that without actually testing that product. So we will ask, so typically a sample is asked for, it is then sent to the testing facility where it is then tested. Typically there is a tolerance that is associated with this. As we know, not every product is going to perform exactly the same each and every time. So there's a tolerance that is built into the program to allow for some variability, but it is usually within a pretty tight tolerance where you can go and validate that you're following the same instructions on how to produce this product as it was when it was initially certified. Moving on to the consumer side of things. Why, as an end user, would you be interested in having your product certified? Do you as end users, and I've asked the question, a product that is certified versus non-certified, if you have the option, which one are you choosing? Are you going to choose the certified product? Or are you going to choose a non-certified product? Or are you agnostic to it? Or is it all about money? What would be your choice here?
Economics do factor in.
Yes, absolutely. But and I'll use layman's term, does that give you essentially like a warm fuzzy that someone's actually looking at this and validating and saying, hey, I'm buying a quality product? There's a lot that goes into that. And touching on some of the trust that goes into from a consumer behavior side of things, this has been validated by the likes of McKinsey, who's done various surveys on this within the industry, as well as an NSF survey. NSF also operates their own certification body on the sanitation side. But people trust independent third-party certification. They want to know what they're buying is not going to hurt them, that it's safe, and it's, a reputable product. And people would be willing to pay more if they, had a choice. Now, the variability in that number is the product. If it is meant, the range on that, it went from like 60% is on like the textile side of things, 70% was on the consumer electronics. So depending on what that product is, there's variability into whether or not you're willing to spend that. But if there's the possibility of, you hurting yourself or it being a good product that's going to hold up and last for a while, you're going to buy something that's certified, and the market has shown that. On the manufacturing side, 3 things are come into play. The big one from my perspective has always been the quality assurance and risk mitigation. Once the lawyers come out, the problems come out very quickly. So what you want to do on here is you want to make sure that any means of making sure that your customer claims are down, that there haven't been any product recalls, some extra level of visibility. Let's say as a consumer electronic manufacturer, you utilize a different transistor that wasn't implemented on a product that was already certified before, and it went out and now there's issues that are being caused with it. You want to have somebody that is going in there and has the ability to say, the last time I was in here, you're utilizing this transistor. Now you switched over to another one. Why have you done that? It needs to be retested or certified under its new production to make sure that it is going to continue to perform as it was when it was originally certified. So you want to have that level of visibility and into your products. That way you can catch problems before they become real problems. In addition to that, market expansion. A lot of areas require certification in some way, shape, or form. A lot of buildings, in order to be able to have your products installed and for them to be occupied, there needs to be, especially on the safety side, there needs to be some level of safety testing on them before they allow occupancy for the building. Then differentiation in a competitive market. As many of you and all of you know, I would assume, we are facing more of a digital marketplace where people are getting products off the likes of Amazon, Alibaba. It moves in a different area where you can buy products or sell products or essentially get your hands on stuff that isn't certified, hasn't been touched by anybody. And this is a good way for you to differentiate yourself, even within those marketplaces, to show that you do sell those products that are quality, that aren't going to, end up hurting somebody in the end. So as I was mentioning, it serves as a supplement to ensure that your quality assurance products are in working order, assists with means to meet regulatory requirements. So I will mention this and have some folks in the crowd that, this is a good example, the large diameter ceiling fans and Department of Energy. What the Department of Energy has done over the past year or maybe a little bit longer, they have an energy conservation standard that has been implemented. It's been around for a bit. Members are manufacturers. Some meet those requirements, others don't. Just claims that are just outlandish, don't meet the laws of physics kind of a thing. It's a matter of making sure that you address your issues before they become a problem, because these products that don't meet DOE requirements, never registered with the DOE, they've made these claims and sold these products. And the DOE last year really started enforcing their requirements to the point where these companies were getting $300,000, $400,000 fines. As it stands, last time I checked, I think the total fines were around $3.2 million. You want to make sure that you meet whatever requirements are in place to ensure that you're following the rule of law in whatever given area that you're in. As I mentioned, certification, market expansion, US, European Union, regulatory requirements, all sorts of safety certification in order to be able to occupy a building. This is also becoming very common in the Middle East. Emerging markets like Saudi Arabia, they have adopted what the US or the EU have done in their particular areas rather than trying to develop their own. They've simply said, take whatever the US regulation requirements are, and that's what we're going to have on our side. So having this will help you get into developing markets outside of more mature markets like the US and the EU as well. Competitive advantage through certification, as we talked about before, there's a lot of trust that's associated with that. This gives you an edge over your competition, helps position you as a leader in quality and responsibility. Again, that you are going through the steps and the means to make sure that your product is safe and performs the way that it should. And always good to have a means to build, brand equity if they feel like they're getting a safe product, they're more than likely to come back to you if they need another one or they have a larger project and they need to buy more products. They're going to look to you first. Implications of non-certification. As I mentioned, we've run into, at least in our industry, we've run into instances where, legal cases when non-certified products have caused harm or have not validated or not been verified as far as their claims. There's penalties associated that if people start getting hurt, the recalls come, the lawsuits come out. It's better to have gone through these steps to make sure that your products meet those requirements and have been safety tested before you find out that they will end up hurting somebody. And as mentioned, with risk of lost job and project loss. Again, a lot of these from an occupancy standpoint on the safety side, if you do not have your product safety tested and it is installed and the building inspector walks the building and he sees that these products aren't marked with, certification mark, they're not going to allow occupancy. They're going to tell the contractor that they need to get this fixed, and that causes delays, it causes penalties on your project. It becomes a much bigger mess because tried to save a few dollars on getting a product that wasn't certified. Environmental impact of certification. We're seeing this a lot more, especially with kind of energy needs, but also on the residential side. We have the Energy Star. Everybody should be familiar with that from a residential aspect. Our association, we have the Fan Energy Index, which is meant to acknowledge the amount of power that's being consumed. And we've noticed that with the DOE CFR that's associated with the commercial and industrial fans and blowers, that regulation has since gone away because of the change in administrations. What we've noticed is now that we're not going to have a federal regulation, the states are going to start figuring out what they want to do on their own. And California had already started this process a while back. Others will be doing so as well. The state of Washington's already in discussions on doing this. There will be more on the horizon. So from a commercial and industrial side, while not having, big brother telling you what to do, you might have 50 little brothers telling you what to do, and they all might not match, which creates its own headaches along with it. So making sure that you meet those requirements of whatever market that you're selling into, if it's state of California, that you have that FEI at 1.00, meeting will allow you to, be able to sell there, even though it's not necessarily being, enforced in full right now. But your competition is also looking at that database to say, hey, what are you doing? You're not meeting those requirements. And when there's a project on the line and, millions of dollars for this, someone's going to get a nice little email dropped in their inbox saying, oh, so-and-so's not listed on the Title 20 database or on the MAIDS database. Don't put yourself in the position to get yourself, disqualified over something that isn't, could have easily been addressed. The future of third-party certification, advances in technology, just like everything else, AI is permeating its way into the third-party certification world as a means to improve the process, to better evaluate whether or not products have met certification requirements. We're noticing that this is starting to be implemented across the board in our world. Increased transparency. Part of the 17065 requirements is that scheme be made available to you as far as what it all entails, what they are evaluating you to. This is while it was always available, certification bodies are being a lot more transparent about what it takes because they're realizing that there are many different options from a certification standpoint available to you as a manufacturer. They want to make sure that people understand what their program is all about. So the industry as a whole has really made their programs and their documents, their schemes on how they operate, available to the public versus having to call them and wait for them to mail it to you. It's a lot easier these days. Then, as I mentioned, growing role of regulatory components in certification. at least on the HVAC side. The federal side seems to have died down, at least for this administration, but the state component is going to be ramping up here very, very quickly. Like I said, we already have the California rules in place, but others, especially on the West Coast, will be following suit here shortly. I'll wrap up on just a quick summary of the benefits of this. Third-party certification serves as a tool for building trust, ensuring quality, and fostering global trade. Helps you meet regulatory requirements, and serves as a tool for product differentiation. With that, kind of open it up for Q&A, answer any questions that you have, whatever you guys got.
You see the enforcement on this is an exercise of doing goodwill on behalf of your company and your product, or
Enforcement from like a regulatory perspective, or
if nobody's asking for the certification,
Mhm.
is it on the manufacturer's end to get mechanical engineers and everybody to buy into? I mean, UL is pretty much given that you don't sell a product without a UL label on it.
Mhm.
Is that where AMCA's certification is going, or is it there already?
we as AMCA are making a concerted effort to reach out to engineers, specifiers, the ASHRAE community. That's why we get involved in things like this, where we're informing the overall engineering community of certification and why it's important and why you want to have that put into your specifications. That way, if I was an engineer and I was putting in a system and it didn't perform the same way as the job was built out, a job will end, but it doesn't really end. You're still going to get the project owner or the building owner going to be coming back to you, and if you say this isn't what I got, the headaches will continue. Yeah, and that's so you're going to be living with this. So you want, from a performance side where we live, you want to make sure that what people are getting are what they're getting. That this was spec'd out right. So yeah, we're noticing, getting in front of the engineering community to say a little bit of work up front is going to save you a whole lot of heartache on the end. Mr. Gipke.
Could future green or energy conservation building codes and rebate programs potentially rely on the AMCA certification to weed out, products that actually have good product data?
I would say, and that when you say good product data, we don't look at it from a what is good. We look at it from a performance. Does it perform the way it performs? But to the industry, let's say our metric, as mentioned, is the fan energy index, where what was being adopted, for at least on the DOE side, but also on the state of California, that you need to have a minimum FEI value in order to be able to sell into a given market. Will that apply? Yes. Most building code, if you look at what ICC puts out, they are very agnostic as far as the type of program that they have, where it's just they'll say it needs to be a third-party certification. They're calling for AMCA, UL, Intertech, take your pick. It's just third-party certification. So in that regard, it won't necessarily be specific to, say, like AMCA or UL, but there may be components of it like a metric like FEI, which anybody can create their version of it. It's just a calculation that anybody can adopt. That could be placed into state regulatory requirements, what have you, to be in place moving forward. So it's kind of a bit of both. It won't be specific, but it might have AMCA, efficiency components built in.
So, as we're running the risk of states doing their own enforcement. There's a lot of state. How do you stay up to date? Maybe you can start with just the AMCA stuff specifically, as opposed to.
Yeah, I'll try not to throw the shameless plug in, but the advocacy component where you, to your point, what are 50, you can't keep up with what 50 states are doing. You need a team to tell you what is going on in a given area. Being involved in a trade association, and I'll try to make this as agnostic as possible. Being involved in a trade association in whatever industry that you're in that has an advocacy component that is staying plugged into what is going on at either both a federal, state, and even on our side as an international association, if you sell into the international market, you need to know what's going on the other side of the world too. So being involved in that regard to know what's coming down the pipeline and how it'll impact your business is the only way as, any kind of business is what's going on. Because otherwise you're going to be able to sell into California one day and then not be able to sell in the next. And if that's a big chunk of your business because you didn't know, you weren't plugged into what's going on, you're putting yourself in serious risk. Sir.
One example from account consultants here. A few years back, we received a Smithville pipe for a project. AST on Smithville. There was some suspicion they could never provide the AST documentation. They didn't have it. They just put the name on the Smithville. So you have to watch for that.
Yeah. No, counterfeit within the market is a very prevalent thing. There is, if you go to the likes of, say, like UL has an entire team of people that investigate fraudulent claims. My team, we get those where it's just someone's claiming verification data that we've never seen or claiming certification on a product that's never come across our desk. We need the market to stay vigilant and see things. If they notice things that look off, to come check with us. Go to the certification body and say, hey, did you approve this? And the answer could be, yeah, we did, and it's been around for 20 years, and that doesn't meet our current format, and it could just be kind of an oddball situation. Or it could be, I've never seen that, and now we need to put out a public notice to tell the public that, hey, this isn't certified, we've never seen this, you need to know, because we don't want you to interpret something and then end up having it bite you in the end.
That verification, is that a phone call or is there a list of approved or, a product index?
There is a index. So part of the ISO 17065 accreditation is they have to make a what's referred to in the industry as a directory of all the products that are certified. So for ours, we have on our website where you can go in and do a certified product search, and you'll be able to see what models have actually been certified. We also approve catalogs on our end, so you'll be able to see if you got a spec sheet and it says, hey, here's the data that you're looking at. You can go in and pull that up and make sure that that's the version that we actually approved. Other places, your Intertex or your ULs of the world, they have their directory where they won't necessarily put out a report, but if we're talking about a safety standard or something along those lines, they'll go and they'll say, yes, this model was tested to UL 762 or something along those lines.
So I have questions. I think we are fully certified in the national scale. We just recently trying to work around the policies in manufacturing because of recent admin change. And then I've been thinking, how does AMCA certification helps with that? That's the first issue. What like an American certification helps with Chinese manufacturers get around these issues in terms of manufacturing legislations?
They will, from a regulatory world, they will help, but there's still the component, they will help you provide you with the data that you need in order to be able to file with the government. So AMCA as a whole, from a Title 20 perspective in the state of California, or on the state level, if we're talking like large diameter ceiling fans, or they won't register you for the CCMS.
Our big distributor is in California, biggest distributor, and we've been doing business for 30 years. There has not been like much issues. But just because of the admin change like in 2016 and this year, and because we have to go around this, and would a certification help or?
it will help provide you with the data that you will need to file. So I'll use state of California as an example, the MAIDS database where you need to provide the relevant information related to your product.
And another
Yeah.
issue, another question is, how do you prove your certifications are global?
So global certifications are dependent on the body or the authority having jurisdiction in that particular area.
Yeah, but
So,
this one doesn't work in Switzerland, for example.
and that's up to Switzerland to decide what they want to accept.
Yeah,
That's
If you don't have agreement with any of the manufacturing industry in Switzerland, then it does not work. It's not global.
it's so every different regulatory or body has the ability to pick and choose. Either they can develop their own, they can adopt other various standards or means of certification. Some will choose to develop their own, others will adopt others or work with the more regional players. I'll use Europe as an example. Eurovent is a big player over in the European market. They will align with what those requirements are. And it's a matter of the certification body or entities establishing like a memorandum of understanding and working over in those particular regions. But every authority having jurisdiction, even within the states here, I'll use the International Building Code as an example. Orlando could be utilizing the 2018 edition of the International Building Code. Tampa could be utilizing the 2021 version. Miami could be utilizing the 2024 edition. Even within specific areas, everybody can be playing by their own rules. And it's, as a manufacturer, you need to be aware of what those requirements are for those given states and be able to meet them in some aspects. So the certification helps, but you still need to know what rules need to be in place for that given area.
And the third question, sorry.
Yeah, no.
What's the difference between your certification and intellectual property registration? I could totally just register my intellectual property. Right,
I'm not.
Like you mentioned in one of your slides, you mentioned it provides protections and Freud. For example, I'm worried that my competitors or some similar manufacturers just maybe look at my products and replicate it since it happens a lot to us, and then we want to kind of protect our product.
So ours is risk mitigation from a consumer perspective, not from a competitive perspective. But if an end user goes and installs one of your fans and ends up hurting themselves because of it, let's say there's electrical shock there, they just hurt themselves because of it. A lot of times, at least here in the US, when people start to get hurt, there's a lot of lawsuits and everybody gets involved. Whether it's, the manufacturer, the building owner, they just pick everybody. And you as a manufacturer, you need to make sure that you provided a product that, made every reasonable attempt that you essentially want to make sure that this was user error at the end of the day. And if you leave that door open because you haven't gone through the certification process, a lawyer is going to go and just start picking that apart, and you open yourself up to some liability there. So that's on the protection side of things. It's more along those lines than intellectual property side of things. Oh, my pleasure.
One thing, this is more of a comment, but also from the incentive program standpoint, sort of how you're talking about how to get the market expansion. For incentive programs, a lot of the times, in order to get the incentive, the equipment will have to have good certification.
Yeah.
And I've worked with properties before where, maybe from a capital standpoint, they were maybe worried about installing these, nicer third-party certified products. But we've had conversations where we said, we understand that, but, installing these, lighting fixtures that are Energy Star certified, you'll get reimbursed for them, up to partial or even up to, full extent.
Mhm.
And that's been a real, that's something that they're definitely interested in. So
Yeah, absolutely. I will say a very common conversation, at least within our association, is our rebate programs and how we can better utilize them. That's always been on the back burner. We've worked with various, entities through the likes of like, a ComEd and other electrical utility providers to kind of start developing that. So it's definitely on manufacturers' minds, and it's on the consumers' minds as well. They want to save money as an end user as well. So it's good to hear that it's being implemented overall, and the market's kind of regulating itself from an energy efficiency perspective versus them being told what to do. They see the benefit of it on their end, especially on the wallet side.
The laws are always changing, the codes are always changing, but the certification is like a fixed procedure.
It's not so much a fixed procedure. So our certification programs are able to change over time. So I'll use ours as an example. We actively meet to modify certification requirements, whether it's from a testing standard perspective or from a procedural perspective. Our committees are always open and always evolving to meet market and member needs, participant needs, to make sure that the program's operating. If we need to be more impactful from a certification side or enforcement side, that we go ahead and we do that because we're reacting to what the market's telling us to. Or if we need to be a little bit more lax in the areas because of certain things or certain market conditions that are out of everybody's control, that we go ahead and we do that. So a certification program isn't necessarily static. There are certain requirements that they have to meet in order to maintain their accreditation, but it's up to the certification body to work within that sandbox to make the program work for them and their customers. So in some aspects, you're absolutely right. It can't change, but in many aspects, it can be tweaked to better serve their customers' needs. Any other questions? All right. So I will put up the QR code for those that are looking for PDH credit. Scott, if I say anything wrong here, please correct me. Scan the QR code. This will provide you with a survey link, as well as later on, I'd say it was 3 or 4 weeks, be provided with.
If they don't complete the survey now, they'll get a link emailed to them in 3 or 4 weeks, along with PowerPoint slides and video recording.
All right. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the show. I hope everything has gone well for you. I hope this has been a productive and eventful AHR for you. And if you happen to have any follow-up questions, I'll be hanging out here for a little bit. All right. Thanks, everyone.